Nastavljamo sa predavanjima i predavanjem kolege iz Beča, gospodina Bernharda Stegera, voditelja Odjela za urbanističko planiranje i korištenje zemljišta grada Beča. Izvolite.
It's okay. I think so. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very honored to be invited here to Zagreb and to tell you a little bit about the brownfield developments we made in Vienna. It's always a special thing to be invited in another city and to explain you a little bit what I'm doing with, or what's my position within the city administration in Vienna. Inside the city administration, we have 3 different departments, which is on 3 different scales in urban planning, urban development, who work for the city of Vienna. We have the general urban development department. They're doing the urban development plan every 10 years, for example, which is a strategic planning tool within the city of Vienna. Then we have the next level, the Department for City District Planning and Land Use. That's the department I'm head of. And then we have a department for architecture. So this is on the next scale. To explain a little bit the situation in Vienna and also why things are they are, it's sometimes quite good to look a little bit back in history. So Vienna around 1815 was a quite small city, which is what is now just the city center, the first district, and in around the middle of the 19th century, it started a very intensive, or Vienna started to grow very intensely, and then, let's say, the first brownfield development started. They demolished the city wall and started to make a city expansion in that area between the city and the surrounding villages, the so-called Glacis area. And this is where the Ringstraße of today is. And as you see, there is the first station in Vienna, the so-called North Station. We had the North, the South, the East, and the West Station. And the first station from Vienna, a private investment, led from Vienna to Bohemia, where the corn was grown, which was used for Vienna. Yeah, as everywhere in Europe, the 19th century was a time where a lot of things were changed, and a major infrastructure project like railway stations, light rail, river regulation, and water supply was built in Vienna. Yeah, what's also different today, Vienna then in the 19th century was a capital of an European empire with then over 60 million inhabitants, and this is why we had these different stations to the north, west, east, and south, because there was always a lot of land. Yeah, this was the first city expansion, the Ringstraße, the museums here, the opera, the Burg Theater here, when this Vienna broke up in a new century. Yeah, the catastrophes of the 20th centuries and the political reordering of Europe after First and then the Second World War changed Vienna's geopolitical position immensely. Vienna's role shifted then from the political center to a peripheral location in the very east of the Western world. The events of 1989 again fundamentally altered the political and economic framework, and the European integration marked by Austria's accession to the European Union in 1995 was always, again a big changing. Vienna was again in the middle of Europe and was reconnecting to the central and eastern countries. Yeah, you can see that also in the population development we are facing right now, or then. If you see here, in the middle of the 19th century, it started to grow up to more than 2 million people by the beginning of World War I. Then, until 1989, it went down to less than 1.5 million. And after the fall of the Iron Curtain, it started again to grow. And last year, since last year, we are again 2 million people, and we are looking for 2.2 million people in 2040. So a quite dynamic population development. Yeah, maybe why Vienna is growing, or who is growing? It's also a little bit from inside of Austria, from the other provinces of Austria. Vienna is a very important city for universities. A lot of people come to Vienna to study here, and sometimes they stay, but also from other countries of European Union and also from abroad, more abroad. So this a second situation we are facing to quite intensely. I think it's the same in all the countries. Global warming brings up to plus 5 degrees until 2100 to Vienna. That means Vienna will have in 2100, Vienna will have the climate of Dakar or Marseille. So that dynamic population growth and also the climate crisis were some very challenges, the most important challenges we are facing. And in 2014 or 15, the first smart city strategy of Vienna was adopted. It was an umbrella strategy for all different parts of politics, and it was re-evaluated in 2022, focusing even more on the climate issue. And since then, it's the Smart Climate City strategy in Vienna. And beside that, we have the Vienna Climate Guide, it's an action plan how to face these challenges. And the Smart City Climate strategy has 3 pillars, which is facing on, or standing on. The one is sustainability, the second is innovation, and the third is social coherence. And so everything we do must stand on these 3 different pillars. Well, for urban development, we have the so-called Urban Development Plan, or the Vienna Plan. The new one was just adopted 2 or 3 weeks ago in the Vienna City Council. Yeah, and it shows where the main areas of development are. So I will talk. I will talk a little bit later about this area, Vienna Main Station or Atzgersdorf, but other important stations which are former station areas, cargo areas, which are important areas for urban development, are this North and Northwest Railway Station. Well, the other side of the medal is the Green City Plan, Vienna. the city government gave us the goal that even in the future, with the dynamic population, at least 50% of the area of the Vienna area has to remain green or blue spaces. By blue, there's the river Danube before it comes to Budapest a few hundred kilometers later. And not just these green areas. This is a plan made in 1905 of the Wienerwald plan, which is from here from the west, to that this remains green. But we've 10 or 15 years started with this green grid here, and that means these are alleys, green streets, or something like this, and this green grid has a maximum grid of 500 meters in between, so there's a maximum distance of 250 meters. Someone is in that grid, which leads to a green area. I will show you 3 projects, or 3 brownfield areas, which were developed in the last 20 or 25 years. And Zoltan showed one of his last slides. There were points which should occur if there is a positive circumstances for the development. And with the Vienna main stations, we really have pointed all of them. But first, just go out and with the bigger view. As I mentioned, 1989 and the following years were very important for Vienna. We came from the edge of the Vienna of Europe again to a middle position in Europe. And some very clever people started to think that it would be much better, instead of having 6 or 7 dead-end stations, one central station, and that do not just mean that you have a new building, but you also have to connect the different railways. So this was a really big infrastructure project, which started in the 1990s, but this gave us, on the one side, the possibility to be part of the trans-European networks. Part of these infrastructure projects are also there was what's been built, a very big cargo terminal in the south of Vienna. And so this area, besides the 6 dead-end stations, which were mainly cargo areas in former times, are now free for urban development. For example, the new main station I will talk about, but the Northwest Station and the North Station. So this is nearly finished. This we just started to build, and this more or less is also finished. And there are some smaller areas which can be developed further on. Yeah, this is how it looked like at the end of the 19th century. The South Station, the East Station, which was then a little bit on the edge of Vienna. So it looked like in the year 2000. So you see these big cargo areas, which was then quite in a central position of Vienna. And this is how it looks today. So in this edge, there has been the 2 stations. So there is now a central station here in the middle, where from here you can connect to all different parts of Europe. Here in the Quartier Belvedere, which is the main central area, it's mainly a business district, hotels, a little bit of housing also, beside the main station. Then you have here the so-called Sonnenwendviertel. It's mainly housing. You see here a big 9-hectare big park, which is not just important for this development area, but also for, this is the 10th district, it's one of the biggest districts and one of the densest districts, and so most of the visitors of this park actually living here in that area. And there's a big school and many other urban infrastructure. And the last development area here, the smallest one, is the Neues Landgut, which is still under construction and will be finished in a few years. In total, it's about 7,000 apartments. Nearly 50% is social housing. I will talk about this a little bit later. So what has been the steps forward towards this development process? As I said, it started in the 1990s to think about this new system, this new railway system, this thinking about the new station. The first name of the station was Main Station Vienna, Central Europe, Europa Mitte in German. So this was the thinking, this really was the middle of Europe, and starting with this discussion in the 1990s, a letter of intent was signed in 2003 between the city of Vienna on the one side and the Austrian Railway Corporation, the ÖBB, and the Federal Ministry of Transport. You have to know that the Austrian Railway Corporation is 100% in the state-owned, and so there we were lucky enough that we had just one landowner, one partner with whom we had to negotiate. After this letter of intent, there was a competition, and a year later, in the resolution of the first master plan. Why do I say the first master plan? This master plan was evaluated a few times, and not because it was a bad master plan, but circumstances were changing, and therefore it's good to have a master plan, especially for a project which occurs over 20-25 years, that you can adopt it, that you can learn, that you can put in new ideas, new technologies, new social or new political aims within your work. After the master plan, there was a framework agreement between the ÖBB and the city of Vienna, which contains especially regulations about financing. So it contains about who pays for what, who gets the land, especially for public infrastructure, for the park, for school, how much social housing. Because we talked a little bit earlier, we have sometimes the same word for totally different things. In Vienna, social housing especially means that you have a fixed land price. And this is defined by law. That means, social housing is not just for the very, very poor, it's also for middle class. You have the whole range. But what they have in common, it's with a fixed land price. So these things were part of the development of this framework agreement, and also the process of the further on design process was defined. Here, this line of allocation of land, which started in 2009, was done by the Wohnfonds Wien for the Housing Fund Vienna. It's a fund of the city of Vienna. Originally, it was the purpose was to buy land for social housing. non-developed land for social housing. But in the 1990s, they also started a special kind of competition, as I said, as the land price is fixed. So the competition by giving away the land is not by who pays the most, but who brings the best project for this plot for this fixed price. And this is a kind of special competition. It's a developer competition actually, but they have to bring a project, and it was judged by 3 criteria until this project. The first criteria was the architecture, obviously. The second was ecological aspects, and the third thing was economic aspects. So at the end, what does it cost for those who are living there? And Vienna is mainly a rental market, so 75% of the people living in Vienna live in rented homes. And one new thing, one innovation within the Bauträgerwettbewerb, it's called in German, this developer competition, and especially this area and part of this area, was a 4th pillar, which is called social coherence. So that every project also has to offer something which brings, which gives something back to society in a social way. For example, housing for handicapped people, or for children, or for and stuff like this. And so it went on. There was a competition for the park, and the construction started. And I just said a little bit before, sometimes you have to evaluate the master plan. In the first master plan, this piece, so the eastern part to the east, to the railway tracks, were defined as a business area, so for carpenters, for plumbers, and enterprises like this. But so the need was not so big, and on the other side, I just showed you the graph with the population development. This graph was steeper and steeper in that time. And so we decided that we change the purpose of this land, there should be also housing. And then we tried a new process, not an competition, urban competition or architectural competition, but a so-called cooperative planning. So we choose 6 architects or architect teams, landscape planners, that they should develop in an open discussion a new master plan for this, learning about the development of this area, what maybe still needed, what's needed more, what's different. And if you look on the urban grid, it's much more smaller plots for much more variety. This is a part of the first stage, and this is part of the second area in the east. So there was invented a new street, which is a pedestrian zone, and on both sides there are these new houses. So, and we also negotiated with the ÖBB about how they will sell the land. And I don't know, you have this in Croatia, it's a thing which is quite popular in Austria and also Germany, a so-called Baugruppen, is self-organized cooperative housing projects. Normally they're quite small because it's quite difficult to handle this and to organize it, but they're very innovative in the way of thinking, especially of the social programming of the house. And we said, well, on special points of the city, for example, around here, here and here, this is such a a cooperative house, or here or here. So on special nodes and special places of the city, there were really special projects. They're also sold by a fixed price. So it's not the most important for that they bring the whole money, but they bring the programming, the social coherence of this thing. And others, for example, in the middle, they were sold who paid the most price. So in general, the bill was okay for the ÖBB, and we made some points where a special effort should have been taken, especially also on the ground floor zones, to give more value to the streets. There is also a special mobility concept in here. While here all the cars are beneath in a garage under the houses, we said, okay, we would make it a little bit different here. We have two garage buildings. All people who have a car must park their cars in these garage buildings and then go by foot to their houses. And so this brings some life in the streets, and that people can meet there easily, and it's especially much cheaper that you have than on the other side build an apartment under every house. So Central Station was development of a large area together with a large property owner. Atzgersdorf is a transformation of an industrially characterized district with many different owners. This means that there is not just one partner, but many, not just one speed, but many, not just one will to realize, but many. And so this is quite different. Atzgersdorf is a part of the 23rd district in the very south of Vienna. So now and then it was in the early 19th century, it was a farmers area with the backbone of the railway track to the south. When you go to Zagreb from Vienna, you will pass by here, or there, it still is. And in the late 19th century, a lot of factories were built in that area, were in different factories, so small and middle scale factories. And in the late 1990s, a lot of them were closed on different reasons. And for us, it was necessary to rethink what should be in that area here, which is a little bit peripheral, but not anymore still. You see how it developed over the centuries, or over the decades, let's say. Then we started with a workshop, the so-called in German Knüpfwerk Atzgersdorf. It's translated by not work. I don't know if that makes sense. And it was not in first. It's not a competition. It was again an open discussion in a closed workshop with, I don't know, 20, 25 planners, and the aim was to identify the potentials, the qualities, the seen and unseen qualities of this area, to explore what could be there, what could be a strategy for urban development, and what came out was somewhat more an idea of how to go further on, and it was clear that it must be very small scale and with independent developments in every part of this net. A little bit later, we made a strategy plan for this area, also for traffic, for green spaces, what should connect, on the other hand, connect this area, and this urban development plan was the grounded to go on, and it shows just a few projects, mainly housing projects and other things. So this red one are also development project, housing, schools, stuff like this. But if you bring so many people in an area, of course you have to reorganize all the infrastructure. For example, this street, Breitenfurter Straße, is not a very big street, and with all these people, it got a really traffic problem. So it was rebuilt. It got an own bus line, so that the bus could be much faster than the cars, and so people should use the bus, the public transport, to go their ways. There is, like I said, the rail track. There will be built within the next years a new station. We invent a new station because it's for these thousands of people which are new here. Another thing is also the green infrastructure. There's a small river Leasing, and it was in former times the natural sewage of all the factories, but in the last 20 years it was re-naturalized, and now it's a really nice connection between this south, tangential connection in the south of Vienna. And also, of course, you need green spaces, leisure areas. A former camping plot was bought by the city of Vienna, which is now a city park, a neighborhood park, and this one is also, we get a new park. Just a few of the projects. This a former coffin factory, which was now rebuilt. Here, around I think 400 apartments. You see how it looks like a little bit here, and the former coffin factory got a cultural center, and also for medical center. There was a pharmacy and doctors for this area. This is reinvented in that city, and it is a listed building which was added a little bit by a Viennese architect. Of course, you need a lot of schools when there are so many more people. The biggest housing project, it was part of the so-called Kariatskersdorf, and as you see, there are a few leftovers from the commercial area. It's a plumber supplier, and he said, no, I want to stay, and now he stays within these living areas. So this is how it looked like. This is how it is today. This is a quite interesting building, the former Unilever property. In some, about 1,000 new apartments, and here a big supermarket which has a primary school on top of the supermarket and a parking lot under the supermarket, which is in that area. This is the street I was just talking about. And this is one of the last big projects in that area we're just working on now. We're just doing the zoning plan, the so-called Biotop Wildquell. It was a former factory for paint, and the buildings had been here. So this is part of a competition, in this case an architectural competition, and the former owner also lived here, and he had a private park, a 3-hectare private park, here, which is not open to the public. But now with the development of this project, we can open the park also to the public. And so an area with a lot of industrial brownfields became an area which shifted its identity totally, and we are often confronted with argues, you always build, you never think about nature or bringing nature in the city. We once counted from, in these 20 years, more than 15 hectares of additional green and public space area will be invented in this part of the city. Yeah, and last, a special project I like very much, which is based on a little bit curious circumstances. The exit Simmering of the motorway A23 was built in the 1970s when this motorway was built. And it should connect this motorway with the A3, which is a little bit more in the east. But because of very heavy protests of the people who lived here, the exit was built, but it was never connected. The next time the street was never built. It wasn't built the last 50 years. And instead of renovating their whole ramps, they were destroyed a few years ago, as you see here. This is how it looked like a phantom exit. And more or less during the same time, we were doing a district development concept for the south, for Southern Favoriten, 10th district. So here is the main station we saw before, and the underground was extended towards south, and we were thinking, what does this mean for that area in terms of housing, in terms of mobility planning, in terms of free spaces. And we were going around, and we came to this point, and it was a very heavy barrier within the urban fabric. So you couldn't go from here to here because it was totally closed by a wall, this exit. But as you see in the bigger scale, it could be a fantastic connection between the Hauptbahnhof area and the green leisure area here at the Böhmischer Prater, or even more in the south. Also this is the 11th district, there are a few bridges or connections also for them. And once we could enter this area, and we saw, maybe again here, that actually it has a really big potential to be a green area. And then I told the deputy mayor about this idea, and she thought, well, this is a great idea. And she was starting immediately negotiations with the Austrian motorway company, also a state-owned company which owns all the motorways. And yeah, they didn't know what to do with this area, and they were quite happy that they do not have to maintain it. And we decided to make a park. And Tangentenpark for you sounds not special, but if you know what the Tangente, this is like the worst road you can think of in Austria is the Tangente. And so it's somehow a strange connection to connect Tangente with park. Yeah, and more or less 1 year ago, we reopened this new park, and it's not just a connection between the Hauptbahnhof area with the more south, but it's a 6-hectare park for an area which nearly has nothing green infrastructure. And a lot of migrants live, so they have not many possibilities to do something else. So a few pictures. There's a pond where there used to be the street. There's a pump track underneath the street. There are different sport fields, basketball and football and calisthenics and some different things. Yeah, there's listed what you can also do. And this is also, or I like this image quite well, because brownfield development does not always mean just make money, but it's also to give something back to the city. And it's always, you have to think about the brownfield development in combination with the surrounding city, and to add something to the city what is needed. Sometimes is needed infrastructure, schools, housing, of course, in a growing city, but sometimes it's needed some green areas. And again, I would recommend to the 3 pillars of the smart city strategy. It must be sustainable, it must be innovative, and it must contribute to social coherence. Yeah, and I think this project is also part of this this smart city project. It's not just about technology. Thank you very much. I think that has been.
Break the ice.
Pitanja? Aha, imaš već, dobro.
Thank you, Bernhard, for this very thorough presentation of Zonenviertel, Atzgersdorf, and Tangentenpark. I have a question related to one detail from Atzgersdorf development. You've shown, if I made a correct note, a former Unilever company building that became a supermarket with a school on the top. Is that so? Could you?
It's a new building. It's not a former.
It's a new building. Okay. Could you? Okay. Nevertheless, could you describe the process behind that building? I mean, who are the stakeholders in developing that very building?
Yeah, this was a very long remaining and complicated process. And the department who is responsible for schools says they will do it never again. Unfortunately, because I think the idea from an urbanistic point of view is quite clever. In that case, it was long the question, who owns the building? Is it the school department of the city of Vienna who builds the building and rent the area to the supermarket? I can understand that they don't want to do this. We would have a company owned by the city who is doing some projects for the city, mixed projects. That would be possible theoretically, but then they had to buy it, and it was owned by a housing company, and it was too expensive. And so the housing company, Buwok, was built it, and they made a contract with the city of Vienna about costs and maintenance and all that stuff for the next 30 years or 35 years, something like this. But it took a very long time until the negotiations for the contracts ended. So on the next side, on the other side of the street, there is another school, and it is again a single plot school. Yeah.
Okay, my name is Ingrid Gojević. I'm coming from the Ministry of Physical Planning, Construction and State Assets. You mentioned several public projects, public investments, and you mentioned the ownership side of the process, but I was wondering what participation process did you provide? Was there any involvement of citizens or local community, or it was in some earlier stages during the planning or so?
To be honest, in the Hauptbahnhof project, there wasn't a lot of participation on the level of urban planning. There was some participation by planning the park and the courtyards of the housing. So it was planned with those who were living in there. In Arzgersdorf, on the other side, this was quite an intense process. We showed the idea of the Knüpfwerk, the very first idea I showed, in the building of the coffin factory to the people. We do it normally like an exhibition, like in a room like this. There is a few parts, for example, housing or green areas, mobility, and there are also some experts there, and people could go there and talk with the people. And it was a regular thing, at least once a year, sometimes more often, to talk with the people about the general development, but also later on about the specific developments on the specific plots. And we now, we did, it's called participatory master plan, and we have some regulations now in Vienna when we do which things. For example, whenever there is a development with more than 300 apartments, we have to start with talking about the project with the people before we start to plan. We invite them, and then again in the middle stage and so on.
I would like to follow up on the question.
Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned for the Arzgersdorf there was a workshop with 25 planners. So is it like urban planners, different offices, or was it kind of, can you maybe explain the process, how it went?
Yeah. This has to do a little bit with the planner inside my department who was responsible for this, Volkmar Palmer, and he was in an international network of urban planners. And they once a year met in one of their cities, from Austria to New York, I guess, and in Europe. And in every city, they made a workshop on a specific planning issue. And in that year, 2011, they were in Vienna, and he invited them, let's think about Arzgersdorf. And if you look on the story from the back, then you see that this is the beginning. But it also could happen that they made just a workshop and nothing happened. So it's not very in a formal way. It was like clever, nice people met somewhere, were thinking about the development of a city, and if it worked well, it could be the starting point of something. If it failed, well, then it would have failed, and we were thinking we're doing it in another way.
It was kind of experimental.
The beginning, yes. Therefore, we had to do this Perspektive leasing, the second document I showed you, because this was then more institutional way of transporting planning ideas.